Picture this. You're a goat herder living in a muddy village beside a river. Your biggest worry is wolves eating your livestock. Your idea of advanced warfare is throwing rocks at your neighbors when they steal your chickens. Fast forward 800 years. Your descendants are marching in perfect formation across 3 continents. They've conquered everyone from Spain to Syria. Their military machine is so efficient, it makes modern armies look like summer camp. This is Rome, and this is the story of how a bunch of Italian farmers created the most feared fighting force in human history. Spoiler alert, it involves a lot of copying other people's homework, getting beaten up by mountain tribes, and turning every defeat into a lesson plan. Welcome to the rise of the Roman army. Let's start with the truth. Early Romans were not impressive. We're talking about the year 700 BC. Rome isn't even Rome yet. It's just a collection of huts on a hill where people live among actual wolves and spend their time fighting over cattle. Their military strategy? Show up with whatever weapons you own and hope your gods like you more than the other guy's gods. No uniforms, no training, no formations, just angry farmers with pointy sticks charging at other angry farmers' pointy sticks. They fought in what were basically family groups. Your cousins watched your back. Your dad was probably your commanding officer, and if you died, your brother inherited your spear.
Hooray!
The Romans did have one thing going for them, though. They were absolutely obsessed with omens and divine approval. Before any battle, they released sacred chickens and watched how eagerly they ate. If the chickens were picky eaters, the attack was canceled. I'm not making this up. The fate of future world conquest sometimes depended on whether poultry had a good appetite. Then came the kings, and these guys realized that maybe, just maybe, they should organize their military a bit better than grab your cousin and charge. The most important was Servius Tullius, Rome's 6th king, who basically invented the draft. He divided all Roman men into groups based on wealth. Rich guys became cavalry. Middle class became heavy infantry. Poor guys got slings, javelins, and stood in the back hoping not to die. This wasn't about fairness. It was about making sure the people with the most to lose fought the hardest to protect it. But here's the brilliant part. Your military rank determined your voting power. Serve in the cavalry? You get a bigger say in politics. Can't afford armor? Your vote barely counts. Rome tied military service to political power from day one. Fight for Rome or shut up about how Rome is run. This system created something revolutionary. Soldiers who weren't fighting for a king or a general, but for their own stake in the state. Early Rome lost. A lot. Their neighbors, the Sabines, regularly raided Roman territory and stole everything that wasn't nailed down. The Volsci and Aequi turned Roman soldiers into pincushions for decades. Most embarrassingly, a city called Veii, just north of Rome, spent generations making Romans look like idiots. But here's what made Rome different. They learned from every defeat. When mountain tribes ambushed their rigid formations, Rome started using smaller, more flexible units. When enemies retreated to high ground, Rome learned siege warfare. When their weapons broke, they copied better ones from whoever just beat them. Rome basically turned military failure into a science. Other cities would lose a battle and spend years recovering. Rome would lose a battle and spend months figuring out how to never lose that way again. In 509 BC, Rome kicked out their kings and became a republic. This changed everything about their military. Now, instead of one king leading the army, they had 2 elected consuls sharing command. No single person could hold military power too long. This created something amazing: competition. Every Roman politician knew that military success led to political success. If you wanted to be important in Rome, you needed to win wars. The result was a city full of ambitious men constantly trying to outgeneral each other. And when your leaders are competing to be the best military commanders, your army gets very good very fast. The Republic also introduced the concept of citizen soldiers serving without pay. Fighting for Rome wasn't a job, it was a duty. This meant Roman soldiers weren't mercenaries who might run away when things got tough. They were fighting for their own farms, their own families, their own political rights. You can buy a mercenary's sword, but you can't buy a citizen's motivation. Here's where Rome made their masterstroke. They completely changed how they fought. For centuries, they'd been using the phalanx, the Greek-style formation where soldiers stand shoulder to shoulder with long spears. It worked great on flat ground, but was useless in the hills and forests of Italy. So Rome invented something new: the manipular system. Instead of one big block of soldiers, they created smaller, flexible units called maniples. Each maniple was about 120 men who could move independently. The army was arranged in 3 lines: young soldiers in front, veterans in the middle, the oldest, most experienced fighters in the back as a last resort. Here's the genius part. There were gaps between the maniples, arranged in a checkerboard pattern. These weren't flaws, they were features. The gaps allowed units to retreat, reinforce each other, or move sideways during battle. For the first time, a Roman army could adapt in real time to what the enemy was doing. They also developed new weapons: the pilum, a heavy javelin designed to bend on impact so enemies couldn't throw it back; the gladius, a short stabbing sword perfect for close combat. The manipular system turned Roman infantry from a rigid wall into a fluid, deadly machine. But Rome wasn't just getting better at fighting. They were getting better at everything that supported fighting. They started building roads, not dirt paths, but proper stone highways with drainage systems and milestones. The Via Appia, built in 312 BC, stretched from Rome to southern Italy and could move legions faster than anyone thought possible. Roads weren't just transportation, they were weapons. Rome could now reinforce any threatened area in days instead of weeks. They also started building in stone instead of wood. The city itself became a fortress. Massive walls, permanent temples, aqueduct bringing fresh water from miles away. Rome was no longer a village that happened to have an army. It was a military capital designed to support conquest. When Roman soldiers built camps in enemy territory, they didn't just set up tents. They built temporary fortified towns with walls, gates, and street layouts. Every Roman camp looked like a mini Rome. The message was clear: Rome doesn't just visit, Rome stays. By 300 BC, Rome controlled most of Italy. Their army had evolved from tribal militia into a professional fighting force. Roman soldiers were no longer just farmers who occasionally picked up spears. They were trained engineers who could build roads, siege weapons, and fortifications. They could adapt to any terrain, any enemy, any situation. More importantly, they had developed something unique: institutional memory. When a Roman army learned a new tactic or discovered a better weapon, that knowledge spread throughout the entire military. Lessons learned in the mountains of Samnium were applied on the coasts of Magna Graecia. Rome had created a learning machine, an army that got better with every battle, whether they won or lost. But this success came with a price. As wars got longer and more distant, Roman farmers spent years away from their land. Many returned to find their farms destroyed and their families in debt. The citizen soldier system that made Rome strong was starting to break down, And across the Mediterranean, a new enemy was rising. So there you have it. In less than 3 centuries, Rome transformed from a muddy village into a military superpower. They did it by stealing the best ideas from everyone they fought. They did it by turning every defeat into education. They did it by making every citizen a soldier and every soldier a stakeholder in the state. Most importantly, they did it by never being satisfied. While other cities celebrated victories, Rome was already planning the next campaign. The Roman army of 300 BC wasn't the legendary force we remember from movies. Those legions would come later, forged by men like Marius and Caesar. But the foundations were set. The discipline, the flexibility, the relentless drive for improvement. The roads, the walls, the engineering skills. Rome had built a machine for conquest. It just didn't know yet how far that machine would take it. Coming up in part 2, we'll see how this citizen army evolved into a professional force under Marius. How loyalty shifted from the state to individual generals. How the very success of the army began to tear the Republic apart. Because the rise of Rome's military power was also the beginning of Rome's political downfall. The machine that conquered the world would eventually devour its creators. Those magnificent, terrifying Romans. They built an army so effective, it lasted 1,000 years. And all it cost them was their freedom.